Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever seen a perfect game of chess? In this video, you are going to see multiple perfect games of chess, as I took Stockfish 15, the greatest chess engine in the world, rated roughly 3,800, and made it play against itself. Now, if engines were just made to play with no intervention, they would play the Ruy Lopez mainline openings and make a million out of a million draws. I programmed these openings to play, these computers to play certain openings that are very popular, and that might be of interest to you. The Najdorf Sicilian, the Caro Kann defense, all right? They played a London system as well, and then at the end, I made them play an opening that was slightly more dubious at engine level and at GM level, and we will see what happens, all right? So many of you enjoy my engine content. Let's jump into the games that I have for you. We're gonna kick things off with a game where they start with a Najdorf in this position. Now here there are many lines, but Stockfish prefers not to play quiet Najdorfs. It doesn't like to play bishop e2 and all this stuff. No. Stockfish plays the main line, which is developing a bishop to e3, rotating the knight over to b3, to e3, b3, and then preparing kingside expansion with a long castle. This is known as the English attack. This is one of the sharpest Sicilians that exists. Of course, at the human level, it's been studied to the death, right? Like, people know theory for 20, 30 moves. Stockfish 15 actually doesn't know theory. Stockfish 15 is the theory, and you're going to see it introduces a lot of very unique ideas throughout this video. So we have white castling queenside, and my browser-based Stockfish is of course going to say slightly different things. Don't worry about it, right? So b5, f4, b4. We see the battle already beginning. Opposite sides, pawns are being thrown forward. White puts the knight on d5, black captures, and now we have kind of a block center of the board. Black now proceeds with a5. You'll notice that Stockfish has not castled. That is because if it does this, that completely takes its foot off the gas. You see the engine already immediately spike up with g5, and probably this is just lost. Like, it only says +1. I would be willing to bet that this position is already losing at the engine level. It probably sees even further into the future if you use cloud servers, which is what we used. So, not browser servers. So we have a5, and the knight now parks in the center. This is known as an outpost. It's a square that a piece stands on where it can't be booted out by enemy pawns. It could be targeted by pieces, but white would try to, trade that in the future if possible. And notice that black protects the king like this, and now castles. So now there's no move g5. The insane thing here is that white's queen is not doing anything, and yet both sides agree white has a slight advantage because white can go knight d4 and knight c6 attacking the queen with the intention of making black do this, and this pawn is not a 1-point pawn, it's like a 4-point pawn. It's just an incredibly powerful piece. So the knight goes to c6, black plays queen c7. White here can attack with the move h4. It's a very interesting idea, and then try to play queen c4, attacking this, and if this check here, that was one of the variations, but Stockfish did not like this position for white. It didn't think that this was so promising. If queen takes d7 here, which is a free knight, apparently this is a serious problem, and I'm tripping over my microphone wire. Yeah, and bishop f6, and black is okay. So instead of playing the move h4, we have just bishop g2, and then here's where really all the goofy stuff begins, as Stockfish 15 plays rook f b8 and just gives away the rook. But if white were to take the rook, then the attack would suddenly just go full force forward. Knight c4, hitting b2. If you go here, knight a3! And if you take, look how quickly your king is executed, right? So it's actually kind of incredible. This is something known as relative value. Something I like to call relative value. The knight here is a 4-point knight. This is a 4-point rook. They are worth the same. That might even be worth more. So we have queen e2, and now we have this. Stockfish 15 is like, oh yeah, your queen's gonna run around? I'm gonna attack it. Here comes a4 and b3. Black's attack has arrived. White is in some trouble here potentially. All right, bishop d4. Pawn takes a2 check. King comes out. King's like, no problem. All right, you can continue. Look, black tries to hang the rook again. It's unbelievable. Black's like, dude, take my rook seriously. All right, white's like, no, I don't want to. No, okay, well, if I don't do it now, I'm gonna get in trouble. So now I'm gonna grab the rook. Now I'm gonna grab the rook. but it's anything but easy. I mean, a move like rook takes a4, knight c4 hits this. This is lights out for white. White is just on the verge of death constantly in this Najdorf. Constantly. Black's position is incredible. And black gets the pawn all the way down to a2, and white still can't take it. If white takes it with the king, the a file becomes a massive point of attack. If white takes it with the queen, white dies much faster, right? So queen b2, and basically this game reached like a stalemate. Like white is unable to break through whatsoever, but white is up material. If white tries to start, you know, playing for a win with c4, of course white just gets butchered like this. So white can't move at all. If white tries to make any progress, they will only be doing more. They'll be doing more harm than good to their position, as black dominates the dark squares, and this bishop is totally out of the game. And basically, what engines do when they meet and they reach like a mutual quagmire is they just start shuffling back and forth. Neither side can make any more progress in this position. They have maximized the capabilities of the position, and they end up repeating moves like 9 times, and the game ends in a draw. It's an absolutely fascinating game where white went on this journey and like totally paralyzed black's attack, and black was like, well, what if I sack a rook? And white was like, oh yeah, you could do that. And just a very, very interesting game. So showing that the Najdorf is absolutely full of life. Now, they played another Najdorf. This one was slightly different. I wanted to show it to you. It was very similar. It was a little bit, you know, not quite the same. It was f3, which is a main line. And the engines played this ultra critical variation. I mean, h5, knight bd7, if you know MVL, he likes to play like this. All of this has happened in games before. And yeah, black in this game went very aggressive with the h-pawn and started restricting white's play. But we got a very, very similar game. I mean, it was basically black attacking white on the queen side, white fending black off. And for kind of a second game, we saw the Najdorf just doing extremely well. Like really, really well. Posing some legitimate problems to the position. And it ended up becoming kind of a middle game of knights, queens, rooks. White sacrificed the g-pawn to win the c-pawn, and this one had more of an endgame feel to it. It wasn't as much of a big attack, but it got very interesting a little bit later when Stockfish 15 sacrificed a queen. So rook d8 check deflects the rook from the pin, and then this, but it doubles, so it has a rook and a knight for a queen, but all of white's pawn play is frozen. Like, white cannot move any pawns. If you have 5 pawns, you can't move any of them. You're gonna have no advantage whatsoever. And, like, you know, again, unstoppable force meets immovable object. Just no way to get to the black king. The black king is extremely safe, and the white king is not. So as white now threatens to promote, black starts, you know, going back and bullying the white king and just not letting him, you know, have a peaceful day. So they end up repeating moves. The king was unable to run away to c5 because that would just result in the loss of this pawn. Yes, you can get away, but you're not going to get much further. So super interesting game the way they handle the Najdorf. They seem to, you know, Stockfish seems to really like the English attack with knight b3 f3. But I have to tell you that black really showed no problems whatsoever in the Najdorf here, and the ideas for black are extremely fluid. Now, what happens when Stockfish 15 plays, excuse me, eval bar? What happens when Stockfish 15 plays my favorite opening, the Caro Kann? To be honest with you, I fully expected Stockfish to beat the Caro. Now, maybe if I had made Stockfish play the advanced Caro with c5, that would have happened. I didn't do that. Now, I am curious to investigate this, but Stockfish every time chose bishop f5. I only programmed this position because I think it's the most challenging Caro Kann, and I was interested to see whether Stockfish was going to play c5 or bishop f5. It always chose the move bishop f5. I think it could probably still hold a draw with black after c5, but white definitely will put a little bit of pressure. But if you play c5, like, I don't want you to watch this video and go, oh my god, I play that. Am I going to lose all my games? No, you're not a 3,800 level engine. You might not even be 800. You are 3,000 points away from the best computer in the world. Like my new glasses, by the way. I've had these for a while. Like, I had this pair some years ago when I first started on YouTube. Then I broke, and I recently got them back. A little tortoise. I think that's what they're called, tortoise shell color. They make me look sophisticated. The white, the Clear glasses make me look cool, but these make me look sophisticated. Anyway, c4, which is a sideline. The tall variation here is h4. I was really hoping Stockfish would play this, but it chose this variation with c4, knight c3, trying to apply a little bit more pressure to that center. Queen b3 is always an idea as well. Knight e7, very common maneuvering idea. And then, just playing knight d7. So I'm very happy that this has the blessing of the engine. This kind of double knight setup. You're going to drop back, maybe bring the knight out here. Black is cramped, but in no way, shape, or form worse. All right? cd5, and now the engine takes like this and clarifies the pawn structure. I was shocked that Stockfish took on d5. Like, I would have thought knight f3 or something. It must have not enjoyed the fact that black was going to get the knight to d5 anyway. That's probably what it didn't like. It just didn't like kind of this situation where that happens. Granted, it doesn't know openings, so it probably just tried something. But to the untrained eye, this transformation of position just doesn't look very good. Like, everything I know about pawn structures tells me this structure is not good for white because this pawn doesn't have any pawns defending it, so the knight will target it. But I have a feeling Stockfish did this immediately after seeing knight d7, because when everything gets traded, the knight is now not on c6. The knight already went here from where it stands on a poor position. So 15 gives a check, 15 blocks, and we have this. And so here, you would think castles, take the open file, battle on the open file. No, the engine plays the move h4. Now, that is a very logical move. It's a very logical move because if black just sort of ignores you, you can go knight g5, threatening mate. If this, now you're threatening mate again. And if this, you probably just win the game. No, you don't just win the game with queen h3 because of h5. And if en passant, apparently there's just no attack anymore. Wow. So what is the game plan here? Okay, white is better, but white has to stay patient. Bishop c3, fascinating. So white just stays patient. White's like, well, I'm going to go rook h6 and then queen h3. Like, that's how I'm going to do it. Okay, but white is better. Point is made. So after h4, the point of black is not to play h5. That is not what black wants. Black does not want to surrender control of the square. Black plays h6. And now white needs to make a move. If white castles, the attack goes out the window. Rook h3 is another interesting idea, but you're not convinced if this is fast enough, not to mention b2 is hanging. So what does white play here? Stockfish 15 takes a rip of the Bond cloud and plays king to e2. What a move. What a move. The point of king e2 is that if queen b2, your rooks are now protecting each other, and rook b1 simply wins a queen, okay? Now, if black were to castle, which is what Stockfish wants, I think Stockfish would have probably gone something with the queen side, like let's say, b4, but really this is the idea. Like right now, apparently f6 is a very good counter shot, so the engine line is a4, rook fc8, stepping off the f-file, and now g4. This is what the Stockfish wants. This is the way Stockfish envisions attacking itself, okay? It wants to play g5 and h5. It wants to wait for black to make kind of a pass-back move. And also what it wants is that if black overextends with something like a5, it wants to immediately trade queens. Immediately trade queens and take control of the c-file and have long-term pressure on the a-file and maybe get something to c6. Outpost square once again, okay? So it's kind of using the threat of an attack to make it the opponent create weaknesses. In the game, remember I told you how the knight should be here? Yeah, Stockfish undevelops the knight. Knight b8, and then knight c6. So it improves the position of the knight without actually committing the king. Fascinating stuff. And, well, it's still trying to attack itself. And here, it plays such a savage move. Like, you see white has played h4, h5, rook h3. The obvious idea is to create an attack on the king side. So you know what it does? It castles. It looks at itself and goes, yeah, do something. Do something. Come on. Swing. You want to hit me so bad? Swing. Oh, well. Rook c1, and then it trades the queens. And so now we are going to have a middle endgame, right? g4, all of this is possible, but king h7 is a very nice move, waiting to see where the attack is coming. And now Stockfish reverses everything and plays f6, and suddenly the attack is back on white. So white's aggression does not pay off, and we're going to get an endgame very soon of rook, knight, and bishop. So we have one rook trade, And now to prevent the knight from going to d6, bishop f4 is timely. So the king walks over to f7. You cannot take on h6 because rook h8 would immediately reverse it. So white waits, black waits. And this game takes a really funny turn. So the engines are repeating, right? You see black is shuffling back and forth. White is not done, however. White is somehow refusing to make a draw. And finally, black strikes and wins a piece. So we have this. This is one of the most unnecessary conclusions to a game I have ever seen. This gets so dramatic. So black is a piece up, but down 3 pawns, okay? Rook e3, like a human probably loses this with with black, because look at this. You are about to get completely run over by pawns. You have 4 on 1. I mean, that's not good. That's not good in a park if you're gonna get jumped. All right, it's not good anywhere. 4 on 1 is not good. It's about to be 5 on 1 if you're gonna lose this pawn. But by the time white wins all the pawns, white's king is stuck in a draw net, okay? And we just have a repetition. We actually have like some pawn captures, then they still are like, I don't want to repeat, then they repeat, and you know. But it was interesting to see the way the Caro Kann got handled. Bishop f5 and kind of a very slow maneuvering approach. And I imagine that if given the opportunity, we would have seen dc and knight d5. And it's good to know that the Caro Kann holds up, you know, at the highest level of the engine. Now, the next game was absolutely nuts. So if you had the patience to watch 16 minutes into this, you're about to witness probably the most insane game of chess I've ever seen. I was really hoping to discover stuff like this when I was recording, because yeah, I mean, it's just incredible what you're about to witness. So I really wanted to see Stockfish come up with new ideas, and this is a very common position in the London, right? But it took. Now, it also played a game where it played normally, like knight f3, knight bd2, and normally the main line after dc is either e6 or knight c6. Stockfish plays a novelty. I have never seen the move knight bd7. On the surface, it's a very logical move, because you want to prepare both e5 and capturing back this pawn. But it's not considered theory, because I thought there's moves like bishop b5, which pin the knight, okay? And then there's variations where white can, you know, play like bishop d7 and queen d4 and defend the pawn and then play b4. And this is known to be like pretty good for white. Of course, it's like, but it's a matter of theoretical knowledge. And if black knows everything, which it does because it's Stockfish, black is going to get a fine position. So instead of that, white plays b4, allowing e5. Stockfish here plays the move g5. When I saw this, I literally was like, what did I do? Did I program it to play like a 300? It just lost the second pawn. It played a double pawn gambit. And after bishop g7, black's just down 2 pawns. But black is about to have long-term pressure. If white plays c3 here, black immediately goes knight e4. Black is better. So Stockfish takes to remove the bishop completely, right? To remove its own bishop and to get a position that looks like this. And for a brief moment, white is fine, right? No, here comes the sledgehammer. White has to play queen a4, pinning the pawn to the rook. Black castles. Black is just still down 2 pawns. White goes bishop b5 with the intention of getting rid of the knight. So what does the knight move? It just moves out of the way. It's like, I'm not gonna, no, can't take me. Now white has to catch up in development, but by the time white does catch up in development, here comes this move. Black is just in time. We have queen b4, bishop b5, queen b5. Folks, white is still 2 pawns up. But there's this incredible move, queen d7. In the middle of all this, just offering a queen trade. And the thing is, if white doesn't trade queens, which white doesn't, white is going to have to deal with pressure the whole game. If white does trade queens, how do you guard this pawn? And then when you're done not guarding this pawn, how do you guard these 2 pawns? You can't. The engine had the foresight when it played g5 to understand that white's position was ill-equipped to deal with the incoming piece pressure, and to be cerebral enough to trade the queens and just apply pressure for the rest of the game is unbelievable. So the engine is still down a pawn, but here come the rooks. Open lines, AC, powerful bishop. White just can't keep up. White plays defense the whole game. Look at this. Literally, white plays defense the entire game. all right? Rook c2, knight d3, and I mean, the knight is just jumping around the position. White just can't move at all. And this happens. We saw this happen in the Najdorf game too. The engines get to a point where you can't do anything, okay? Like, neither side can really do anything. If white makes any steps forward, they're immediately gonna get slapped. And black can't make any steps forward because white is passive, but accurately defending. So, another pawn has been lost. We have rook b5. And black is just going to continue to spend the game harassing the white pieces. White just can't break out at all. It's like spawn camping, all right? Threat of repetition. All right, now we go into an endgame. The engine is so confident it can hold this endgame, it trades everything into a drawn endgame. All right, bishop f8. Queen back. But now I won the pawn. That's it. I mean, this is, of course, going to be a draw. We're going to kind of go forward. Sometimes engines have a sense of humor. In this case, we just get into a knight versus bishop endgame. And it takes a while. I mean, all the pawns end up getting traded, and game ends in a draw here with king takes g5. This was fascinating. This might just straight up, like, refute d takes c5. Now, of course, the computer did not play the ultra-critical lines, but, like, white could have played like this and just played chess, right? There's no such thing as refuted for white in the London. White could have played like this and just got a relatively normal position. But the move b4 might be straight up refuted by g5. What an idea. I mean, this was unbelievable when I saw this. And my engine has absolutely no idea what it's in for. In this position, it's completely fascinated by this position. And slowly, as you continue to click forward, it's like, oh, wait, this position is a problem. Like a serious problem. It does not believe in this position for white after some period of time. So, yeah. Last game that I have for you, I programmed the computer to play a modern. I wanted to see this position challenged by Stockfish because the modern is not a good opening at 3800 level. We don't see it often in classical chess either, and that's because white gets an advantage. So how is white going to prove that advantage? Well, white is going to play knight h3, looking for knight g5. Now, black is not going to just castle and allow the knight to go there, allow for kind of like effortless expansion. Of course, it would just be a crazy game. Instead of that, the engine actually takes the knight when it arrives, and you would think rook h3 and then something like e6 just being rock solid, but it takes with the pawn. It completely breaks all things I know about chess and opens up the G file to prevent a short castle or potentially make, black think twice about it. And it also prevents knight G4 for the future, right? Because now the pawn would take. So E6. Okay. Bishop G5, Queen D7. Long castles. And the position here is absolutely fascinating. White is slightly better, but black is going to try to kick white out. So the bishop goes back, knight c6, and now Stockfish 15 does not want its mirror image to just have a pleasant life, so it goes d5. Black plays pawn takes d5, we have knight d5, and you might think, well, why not pawn takes d5? Well, if you remember the Najdorf game, like you would think knight e5, but then of course f4, and actually now this whole knight g4 business is really, really well prevented. But it would just be knight e7, and black is solid. Black's going to go here, get the knights out. So knight d5, we have this. And now the fun begins. Are you ready? We have bishop sacrificing itself on a6. What? What? Okay, takes, queen d3, king. What's next? I don't understand. Check here, draw? Is it going to be just a repetition of moves? No, rook d3. But what's the threat? I mean, rook is going to defend, and if rook b3 check, just king c8. It's completely safe. There's nothing here. There's nothing here at all. Well, that's why white plays knight e7 first. If knight takes, that's a free queen. If queen takes, then now you check and you pick up the knight. Now, black is still defending, but white has won back the a pawn. How is this position plus anything for white when white is just down a piece? Well, it's because of these pieces. You see, the Stockfish 15 playing with white here understands it's going to take black multiple moves to get these pieces back into the game. And in that time, white is going to play a mix of a few attacking moves. If queen e4, it's just mate. Check here, check. Very important check. Check, mate. This is a very common checkmate pattern where the bishop checks, not the queen, and then the king stays here and gets mated. So c6, giving up the pawn to try to get the rook and queen into the game. Rook d1, not taking the pawn. All right, no queen trade. No queen trade. Rook e8, I'm not even taking this pawn with check. All right? I don't want to take this pawn with check because I don't want let your king get safe. Rook d3. Now we see that Stockfish 15 was right. But which one? The one playing with white. It thinks that this position is way too strong and this knight is completely out of the game. Yes, black is up a knight. But if a knight is stuck on h7, it's not doing enough to be considered a knight, all right? It's just a horse. So it now plays queen takes b2, bailing out into an endgame where it thinks that it's going to hold its counterpart down a pawn. Now, you might argue these pawns are basically one pawn. You're right. But white has a very important asset, an outside A pass pawn, and white is rated 3,800. Here comes e5, cracking open the position. If de5 is played, rook d7, rook's on the 7th rank, super important in endgames, and if rook f6 defending, rook d8 check, king c7. Look at this, the fate of this knight. It is trapped and it is dead. I have never seen something like that. It's dead, it just dies. So e5, rook e5 is played, and now the computer is going to spend the rest of this game bringing all its pieces forward in the right way and using that a pawn. In a few moves, we're going to see that pawn get to a5, all right? Maybe we're going to see it get to a6, but just its existence makes black's life miserable, all right? Bishop e3, rook c4, rook g7 applying pressure, all right? Maybe it's going to trade, maybe not. It's looking to break in. That pawn can be taken, but the second it gets taken, white's going to win the other pawns. So we have king b3, c5 defending, bishop e3 back. White is not taking anything. White is just making black tie their shoes together. All right, I'll take that, no problem. You could get that, bishop d6. All right, knight back. Here comes my king. I don't need your g-pawn. I need to paralyze your king. The king has no legal moves. The knight is running out of legal moves. Black is overall running out of legal moves. Here comes the king. Rook b2. Now I'm going to give you a check. Now I'm going to give you a check. And are we going to repeat moves? No. No. Just when you thought we were going to repeat, I'm going to take. We're going to go through this process one more time. And now bishop e5. All right, knight b8 back. King c5. Knight a6. King c4. I've now won both your pawns. And at the end of the day, I still have my h-pawn. Remember that doubled h-pawn? And here it goes. Stockfish is going to begin the winning process all over again. Now, this endgames take a long time when engines are involved, but white is up 2 pawns. Black is not resigning because, you know, respect for the game and whatnot, but that's it. Remember how I told you that pawn was just going to be there as a problem? Yeah. This is why. Computer slowly but surely gets back. Look at this a6 move. If you take discovered check on d8 wins the knight. And that pawn has been used successfully as a decoy, and this is just simply a winning king, rook, and pawn endgame as you block and the pawn goes. And the engine will play till mate. As the king makes it, the queen promotes, and yes, Stockfish 15 does know how to mate in the most efficient manner with the king and the rook. It takes 127 moves, but it gets the job done. So, verdict, modern defense, probably not good at Stockfish level. Caro, passed the test. Oh my goodness. London, solid, and created some really, really interesting attacking ideas. Najdorf was just incredible. I mean, I could make them play 100 games of Najdorf. It would be super fascinating stuff. So I hope you enjoyed the video. This is what perfect chess looks like. So I don't know if you want to learn anything or, you know, bring anything back to your own games, but yeah, I really enjoyed watching Stockfish play against each other, and maybe I will program them to play some goofy openings in the future, some gambits. So I'll see, like, you know, the favorite gambits that Stockfish has. Let me know in the comments some ideas that you might have for content, and I will see you in the next video. Get out of here.